Freeman, Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630, WMAL.
Good morning, everybody. It's 8:07, and we're all in our places here. And, there was some big doings in the United States Senate last night. It was so late in the evening that it's really not even in your morning papers. But basically, Democrats invoked a sort of a version of what has been called the nuclear option. And it's a little complicated. We're going to get into it. But basically, some are calling this a naked power grab by Democrats in the Senate to sort of squash the desires and the will of the minority. Now, yesterday, after our broadcast, we sat down for a taped interview with Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader of the Senate. Now, this hadn't all happened then, but we did start by talking to him about the president's repeated demands that the Senate pass his jobs bill.
Yeah, he had asked us on no fewer than 12 occasions out on the campaign trail to vote on his jobs, what he called his jobs bill, without any modifications whatsoever, and to do it now. And I offered that opportunity to our friends in the Democratic majority here in the Senate earlier this week, and they didn't want to do it, and have since altered it. By the way, this is really, in my view, not a jobs bill, but a second stimulus bill. Another sort of government spending program. We tried a massive stimulus back in 2009. We've lost 1,700,000 jobs since then and added 35% to the national debt. We got an old saying down home in rural Kentucky, there's no education in the second kick of a mule. Why in the world would we want to do it one more time?
So, Senator, the reason that they didn't want to bring it up on the Democratic side is they don't have the votes, right?
Yeah, they didn't have the votes, and they have since apparently modified it, the tax portion of it, to hit what they believe to be millionaires. The problem with that is there are over 300,000 small businesses that pay taxes as individuals, not as corporations. And so we would be going against what the president said just as recently as last December and signing an extension of the current tax rates, that it's a terrible idea to raise taxes in the middle of an economic slowdown. So I think they're struggling, trying to figure out, how to cobble this together. It's certainly not anything that's going to create jobs. Maybe it'll create an issue. They can go out there and play class warfare. But it certainly doesn't have anything to do with creating jobs.
Senator, is that surtax that they're talking about, the millionaire surtax as they call it, is that a permanent tax to pay for a temporary stimulus?
Yeah, a permanent tax to pay for a temporary stimulus. And, it's just... I'm sure if you took a poll, everybody would say, that's great. I don't make $1 million a year, raise taxes on the people who do. But as I indicated, there are over 300,000 small businesses in America, some of our most productive small businesses, who don't pay taxes like a corporation. They pay taxes like an individual who would be whacked with this. This is a job killer right in the middle of an economic slowdown.
Let me ask you a little bit about the super committee and what they're up to. Do you hear any rumors about what's coming out of that? And what do you think is the proper goal for them? There's been some talk about Boehner wanting them to go beyond the 1.2 to 1.5 trillion, and you saying, well, let's stick with the 1.5 trillion.
Well, the goal is to bring about significant deficit reduction, and there are a variety of different ways that can be done. What's different about this joint congressional committee is we've given it real power. And we have said that the product that they come up with, 12 serious people dealing with a serious issue, will be voted on. Their product must be produced before Thanksgiving and will be voted on before Christmas without any amendments and with a simple majority here in the Senate. Most things are not done by simple majority in the Senate.
Do you hear anything about that product?
Well, no, I'm not going to engage in speculation about what may or may not be the final product. I've appointed 3 people that I know are serious, intelligent folks who are trying to work together to get an outcome, and you could engage in endless speculation about what they might do. We know what needs to be done in broad categories. We need to change the eligibility for entitlements for future generations, or it won't be there for any of them. And if they can shoehorn into this process a significant tax reform, we now have on the corporate side, the second highest tax rate in the world, and soon we'll have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. That's anti-competitive. We need to do tax reform again. It's been 25 years since President Reagan and Tip O'Neill did that. These are the kinds of big changes that they're looking at.
A lot of people are paying attention, obviously, to the 2012 presidential election, but what about the elections in the Senate? Are you expecting to be a majority leader in 2012?
Well, that'll, of course, be up to the American people in next year's election. We do have, I think, a good opportunity. It appears as if the president is in serious trouble, and if the election were tomorrow, I think he would be a one-termer, and that will obviously have an impact on congressional races, both Senate and House. So we're optimistic. The Democrats have more exposure than we do. There are 23 of them up and only 10 of us. But look, it's a long way until the election, and we're certainly not measuring the curtains around here.
Last question has to do with Solyndra, Fast and Furious, a couple of investigations underway. Any thoughts about either of those?
Well, that's what happens when the federal government plays venture capitalist. You know, venture capitalists ought to be playing with their own money, not with taxpayers' money. And here you got an example of the government trying to pick winners and losers. They blew $500 million. And to put that in context, they lost more money on Solyndra out of the first stimulus than was sent down to my state to build roads and bridges.
And on the issue of Fast and Furious, what about the Attorney General's, the question about his testimony?
Well, it certainly needs to be looked at, and I believe that the House Judiciary Committee is going to do that, and if the Senate Judiciary Committee will do the same, that would be good. I think it clearly needs to be investigated.
Well, he's the Republican leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell. Thanks for joining us here on the Morning Majority.